Hello and welcome to my crazy hair. Welcome to The Rational Live. I'm your host, David Dole. Today is May 7th, 2021. I just saw in the chat here, the live chat, that Black Caucus is heading to his graduation right now. Congratulations, getting a bachelor's in political science today. Amazing. That's awesome. He's one of our mods. He does great work. Thank you for your fantastic work, and congratulations on your graduation. Amazing. So, great show today, of course, as always. Well, I mean, why wouldn't there be a great show today? So, I'm hitting every country. Well, 3 countries. So, I got a American story involving the media. I have a Canadian story, and I have a story out of the UK. So, 3 of those stories, and then we'll do tweets of the week. And then, as always, you know, a couple of stories I couldn't get to in time. Maybe we'll explore some of that. We will see. Before I do anything, of course, I'll be accepting, reading out super chats throughout the stream. You can send those in through the live chat. Also, if you want to support the show just generally, therationalnational.com/join. That's the Patreon page. Links are below the video. There's a Patreon page, a PayPal page, Streamlabs tip, which actually I should be checking that more often there, because you can send questions on there as well. And Streamlabs does not take a cut, unlike YouTube. But so various ways to support the show. And again, I'll be taking super chats throughout. And somebody asked me, am I Jesus? No, I am not Jesus. I can definitely tell you I'm not Jesus. But thank you for the compliment, I think. All right. Let me get to this first story. Am I missing something? I keep feeling like I'm... What did I not mention? Oh, Twitch. I couldn't make it on Twitch last week, family stuff. But assuming there's no family stuff Sunday night, I will be on Twitch again. I have promised on Twitter to play through Resident Evil Village on stream because I absolutely cannot stand survival horror games. They freak me out. So I promised I'd play through it, and now I'm learning through reviews that the game isn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. Fantastic news for me. So I will still play through it, even though it's not as scary. And then I may also play through Resident Evil 7 after that as well, since that one apparently is a little frightening. But Dan Mindell, let me bring up the chat here since some questions are coming up. Dan Mindell, thoughts on Bill C-10. So I'm taking more of a wait and see approach. There's still amendments being done, like there's changes being done to the bill. I want to wait and see what the final version of it is, what happens with that. But I am reading more into that. I still have fears about, so Bill C-10 is a bill in Canada that may possibly impact speech on the internet, but also not really. So there's a lot of misinformation coming from conservatives. At the same time, there is actual worry about the bill that is not based in just fear mongering. So I'm still waiting to see all that, but I will direct you to Michael Geist. I believe his last name is pronounced Geist. If you look up his name and Bill C-10, you will see, I'm sure you'll see articles that he's written on this. He's one of these guys that is definitely super into this issue and understands it very well. And I would read his opinions on that for now. All right. I'm looking forward to playing Resident Evil, I gotta say. I still gotta finish Persona, though. I gotta finish Persona 5. What else am I playing through? I don't know. PlayStation Plus gives me too many free games. So I have a big backlog of free games I should be playing through. All right, let me prep this next story. This first story. And of course, plenty of clips this week. At least 2 of the stories this week have clips. Actually 3, including tweets of the week. So how about that? All right. Democratic Senator Joe Manchin got absolutely rocked by CNN's Chris Cuomo in a rare case of cable news actually doing their job. Now, this is over Manchin's unwillingness to reform the filibuster, claiming that Democrats can work with Republicans in a bipartisan way, even though Republicans have shown no interest at all, and I'll get to more on that in a minute. First, I want to show you this clip where Chris Cuomo just rocks Joe Manchin and really has no idea how to reply to this.
Look, in all due respect to your party, I don't think you guys play power politics as well as the other side. And I think that if you were to get rid of the filibuster, McConnell would use it against you guys when he gets back in power, and it's only a matter of time, in a way that you never even thought of using it. So I hear you on that.
Well, he could have used it already.
But I'm just saying, Senator, right now you have infrastructure, you have needs for families, you have a lot of gross deficits that you're dealing with. There's a chance that you get none of it passed. Forget about, background checks or anything like that.
Let's see what we've done already, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Look what we've done. $1.9 trillion. Look what we did last year in all bipartisan way. Look what we've done this year. We didn't do it with a bipartisan way, but we did it because it needed to be done with the pandemic that we had. We did it at $1.9 trillion.
But you didn't do it bipartisan.
Input from the, no, we had a process of bipartisanship to a certain extent.
But then there were no votes.
There would have been more, but there wasn't. But there was one. Well, we never. We didn't try. We had some votes as far as in the
but they went through the reconciliation process, Senator, as you know. You went through reconciliation because they weren't going to work with you on it.
All right. The bottom line here is Democrats will not retain power if they don't do more to actually help people. And in order to help people, to get things passed, they need to reform or get rid of the filibuster, which Joe Manchin is against. Cuomo here is exactly right, pointing out the power politics part of this, where Republicans will use their power in ways that Democrats can't even imagine. Can you imagine the current Democratic Party nominating and pushing through a Supreme Court justice in the final weeks of an election? And that was after, so the GOP did that with Amy Coney Barrett. That was after they denied Obama his Supreme Court pick in the final year of his term. Democrats would never even imagine of doing any of that. The tiniest bit of pressure they feel from media, they fold immediately. Republicans do not care. And here they are, not even willing, or at least Manchin, not even willing to reform the filibuster. And of course, it's because he's corrupt, he's conservative. He basically is a Republican in sheep's clothing. So any argument he brings up here is just a way to distract from the reality. I mean, Manchin says here, quote, "Look at what we've done, Chris, 1.9 trillion. Yeah, the American Rescue Plan, which you didn't get a single Republican vote for, despite the fact that Manchin himself helped to strip the bill down, cutting unemployment benefits and fighting against the wage increase. Even after doing that, did not get a single vote from a Republican." But this is Joe Manchin's way of doing politics. Fold, 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 and still not get a single vote from the other side. Now, before I get to the second clip here, this is what Mitch McConnell recently said. 100%, McConnell's 100% of his focus is on blocking Biden's agenda. So Mitch McConnell, similar to his approach to Barack Obama, does not want to help Biden pass anything. This is coming from the minority leader. Here's what, and Chris Cuomo references this, and they discuss it.
Joe Biden has got more done in 100 days.
But not with them.
Any president in my time that I can recall.
Not with them.
Basically, he got more done. He's put a plan out there, and he got more done.
But not with them.
We got it done, okay? And
but
we're
not
moving
with
in the right
them.
direction.
Not with them.
But you've heard Joe Biden. He wants it to work. It will work.
But they don't want it to work. He just told you, "I'm stopping the administration." He just said it to you,
You don't know. You don't.
He just said it.
That was one person.
He's the head.
That's one person.
He's the leader.
He's not controlling all of that, I can assure you.
Look how quickly Joe Manchin folds when pushed just a little bit. He has no response to this. He's just, what did Manchin say there? He's just one person. He's the minority leader. He's the leader of the GOP. This is their agenda. They don't want to help Biden at all. But Manchin's still here pretending there's a way to work with Republicans in a bipartisan fashion. And Manchin's quote here, "But you heard Joe Biden. He wants it to work." Oh, Joe Biden wants it to work. That doesn't mean shit when you're dealing with a party that simply does not care. Now, in the last clip here, Cuomo brings up a great point about representation, and Manchin says something incredibly stupid once again.
I don't know that they envisioned where you are in the Senate today, where you guys are 50-50, but 50 on the right are representing about 20% of the country. It's so skewed, and that 20% has such extreme views that's why you have this party in disarray the way it is. You have 70% of the Republican Party saying that Trump won, that Biden didn't win. You really think that's the kind of setup where they'll work with you?
Well, that's a horrible situation, and basically the extremes on both sides. There's people on both sides saying that we have 20% on each side or 30% on each side that's extreme. Okay, with that being said, you've got to find the middle. The middle's been eroded.
Okay, I'll get to Manchin's bullshit in a second here. But first, Cuomo brings up a point that really needs to be brought up more often in the mainstream press. Despite holding 50 seats in the Senate, Republicans represent only 20% of voters. And that minority of voters is completely out of their mind. This is holding up any and all progress because half the Senate represents a minority of people in the country. Nothing is getting done. And Manchin goes into defensive mode as if he's a Republican here, saying, quote, "There's 20 or 30% on each side. That's extreme." Imagine if the Democratic Party denied that Trump won the 2016 election. Imagine if Obama called it the big lie when Trump won. Imagine Obama held a rally at the White House, encouraging supporters to pressure Vice President at the time, Biden, to overturn the result. And then they stormed the Capitol and broke in with weapons and ties and or cuffs and all the stuff they had there. Imagine any of that happened, but that was Democrats and not Republicans. How can Manchin possibly pretend that there's a similar extreme on the left to what is happening on the right? The Republican base doesn't believe that Biden won the election. That is batshit insane. On the other side, you have the Democratic Party base that wants everyone to have health care and a living wage. These two are apparently the same thing to Joe Manchin. He is a corrupt piece of garbage. Okay, that's that story. I'm going to prep this next one. First, thank you, Samantha Sider, for the $2, the super chat and the little icon there. Thank you so much. A very loyal supporter, Samantha Sider. I'm gonna prep this next story, and I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Let me grab a couple of these chats here before I get to the next story. Car Wash Freak 97 says Joe Manchin is awful. They need to primary him out. Yes, they do. It's been tried. It was tried recently, at least once, by Paula Jean Swearingen. I'm not in West Virginia, but it seems a lot tougher than it looks to primary Joe Manchin. He has quite a hold on the state there. Mr. Sir says, do you think it's possible for we, the frontline workers, to file a class action suit against Tucker for his anti-mask / vaccine endangerment of our lives? Do I think it's possible to file a class action lawsuit? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but it's undeniable that Tucker has had a negative impact on society with the. I mean, so Tucker put out some anti-vax BS, or anti-vax and anti-mask BS. But the stuff he said about anti-masks, there's a video of somebody like out in the wild using his exact talking points. I think it's somebody was wearing a mask and then basically the person telling him to take the mask off. And I forget the terminology, but it was the exact terminology and statement that Tucker was saying to tell people if they're wearing a mask. The amount of impact he's had, I think clearly it's hard to quantify, but he's definitely having an impact considering he's the most watched cable news figure and has put out just endless propaganda about being anti-vax or anti-mask, despite the fact that he himself is vaccinated. All right, let me get to this very different from what I usually cover story, but let's go across the pond. Keir Starmer's Labour Party got absolutely rocked in elections across England. Now, this follows years of smears and attacks from neoliberals and the media on former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, where they attempted to pin losses on him and his politics. Yet, looking at the results here, clearly Jeremy Corbyn is not the problem. So to understand the divide here, Jeremy Corbyn represented a left-wing, working-class focused view. Keir Starmer, on the other hand, the new leader, is more of a standard capitalist-focused view. So first here, on just an overall view on what's been on the results in these elections. So for this from the BBC here. Labour is losing ground with the Conservatives in elections across England in the first big test of Sir Keir Starmer's leadership of the party. The first blow for Labour came when the Tories took a Westminster seat from it in the Hartlepool by-election. It has also lost control of several councils, while the Conservatives have made gains, and the Tories won more than 70% of the mayoral vote in Tees Valley, an area that used to vote Labour. Speaking of Tees Valley, let's dive a little deeper into Tees Valley here. So this is the mayoral election. Conservatives, 73%, a plus 33. Labour, 27%, a minus 12. Yet under Jeremy Corbyn, Labour lost Tees Valley by only 2 points in the first round in May 2017. Under Keir Starmer, Labour has lost it by 46 points. This is a similar trend all across England. Another result here, this from Staffordshire. You have the Conservatives plus 20, 57%, Labour 28, minus 3. A Conservative hold. In 2016, Conservatives won this election by a 6-point margin in the second round. It was entirely winnable. Labour just lost it by 29 points. So you have this new neoliberal leader, and Labour is doing much, much worse than they were under Jeremy Corbyn. And in case it wasn't clear, this makes it a little more clear. Exclusive polling from Channel 4 News shows the top reason given for not voting Labour in elections in England yesterday was Sir Keir Starmer's leadership. So, in polling, people are saying the reason why I'm not voting for Labour is because Keir Starmer is the leader. Now, obviously, the attacks, I think, will continue. Will we see changes to Labour here? Will they have a more left-wing, working-class view going forward? Not likely. Here's what Keir Starmer is saying so far. Asked for concrete policy changes Labour will now make in response to these election results. Keir Starmer tells us, the BBC, that he will change the things that need changing, and that is the change that I will bring about. This is worse than when the Democratic Party was out there saying, we're for good things and not for bad things. This is even worse than that. We're going to change things that need changing, and that is the change I will bring. You could not be more vague. So what will change? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But clearly, if there is one thing that these elections show, it's that Jeremy Corbyn was a much, much better leader than Keir Starmer is, and actually spoke to the working class. Okay, short little story there. Gonna have to prep this next one. Let me see if there is more super chats. Geese Studio says, thanks for covering the Columbia story. I hope in the future there's some semblance of national strike in the U.S. I hope so too. But yeah, the Columbia story. I'm glad people. If there's something I'm not covering, feel free to message me about it, because I only covered that story because I was getting messages about it. It's something that maybe I would have covered regardless. I mean, occasionally I'll dip into international stories, but clearly I have to do a lot of research and to get into any of that, as I have no basis of information for any of it. So it took me a while to read up on it and get into it, but knowing that there's a demand for stories like that to do helps to encourage me to cover something like that. So I'm glad people asked me to cover that. And yeah, if you haven't checked out that story, go watch it. Sam O says, thoughts on Governor DeSantis and on his political stunt on Fox News when he signed a voter suppression bill in the state of Florida. I did not see this political stunt. There's been a lot going on in Florida. voter suppression, free speech suppression. There's another bill about allowing, or part of it allowed people to essentially drive into protesters with their car. So I don't know. I'm almost treating Florida as like a different country at this point, where it's like, I'm just going to miss some of this because there's almost too much going on, and it's being covered well in other places. I don't know how much I can really add to the conversation. But yeah, DeSantis is obviously out of his goddamn mind, and so are many voters in Florida for voting for him. But of course, larger issue there with media and misinformation, and that's going to be a constant battle. Ryan Nowicki here, your chat is cut off. Why does YouTube do this? Here we go. Ryan Nowicki says, ISPs under Trump admin both paid millions for fake comments on net neutrality and hiked prices up almost 20% the first 3 years. Not surprising at all. Interesting. I have not heard those figures, but yeah, of course. Trump, despite his populist BS rhetoric, was just as pro-corporate as anybody else before him was. So not at all surprising to see that there was an impact from that net neutrality decision. All right, I got to prep this next story. I will be right. All right, I'm back. What's up? Canadian story coming up. So we've had an American story. We've had a UK story. Now we have a Canadian story. How about that? The Ontario government's Minister of Long-Term Care, Marilee Fullerton, lied her way through an outlandish rant in an attempt to defend herself. Now, this follows a scathing report from an independent commission criticizing both Liberal and Conservative governments for keeping long-term care homes in such horrible conditions. So first, before I get to the clip, a little bit more on this from the report. Quote, the province's lack of pandemic preparedness and the poor state of the long-term care sector were apparent for many years to policymakers, advocates, and anyone else who wished to see. Ontario's policymakers and leaders failed during those years to take sufficient action despite repeated calls for reform, the report stated. Rather, the commitment and resources needed to prepare for a pandemic and address long-neglected problems with long-term care were shunted in favor of more pressing policies and fiscal priorities. So this report goes deep. It's, I think, 300 plus pages, goes deep into just the complete disaster that is long-term care and the lack of preparedness, reaction from both Liberal and Conservative governments. Now, as I mentioned, Marilee Fullerton, the Minister of Long-Term Care, defended herself over this report and the attacks against her, and just went on this insane rant with a bunch of lies that I will showcase in just a second. Check this out.
Minister of Long-Term Care to reply.
Thank you, Speaker.
I'm getting an echo. Maybe that's just me. Here we go.
Minister of Long-Term Care to reply.
Thank you, Speaker. If the Leader of the Opposition had done her job During the time that the previous government neglected long-term care, if you had been a voice, if you had taken the opportunity that you had, years and years of runway that you wasted, that the Leader of the Opposition closed her eyes to. Go back to the Hansard. Look how many times she even bothered to mention the long-term care word. Look at your failure. I was left to pick up the pieces from a devastating 15 years of neglect. I will not be spoken to that way by the Leader of the Opposition that neglected this sector, and the Opposition at the time neglected this sector.
Order.
All right. That was completely insane. You have there Fullerton attacking the leader of the opposition, being the NDP here, Andrea Horwath, the leader of the NDP, attacking Andrea Horwath for never discussing long-term care, for somehow leading to the problems here when she wasn't in power, when the NDP weren't in power. So the replies to this video, of course, completely annihilated any point that Fullerton was trying to make here. So this account here says, I took Mary Lee Fullerton's advice. I searched the Hansards, which is the transcripts of these debates. Andrea Horwath was produced 155 search results from 2009 to 2018 for long-term care. So Andrea Horwath mentioned long-term care 155 times between 2009 and 2018. Now compare that to the Conservatives. Hudak, Brown, Wilson, Ford, zero times. And Fideli, 0 times as well. Never mentioned long-term care. Yet, here are the Conservatives attempting to attack Andrea Horwath for not bringing up long-term care. Going on here, another account, Matt here posts, Fullerton is just straight up lying here. Horwath was a vocal critic of the Ontario Liberals since becoming an NDP MPP in 2004. As leader of the Ontario NDP, she consistently criticized Liberal failures and has campaigned on improving long-term care in every election. So some examples here that he shares. This is an article saying that's what Hamilton NDP MPP Andrea Horwath wants to know. She's demanding the government establish minimum cooling requirements for nursing homes across the province. Here's another one. Ontario NDP leader slams McGuinty over needing more hospital beds. So again, discussing long-term care. And last one here. Less than 1 in 5 long-term care homes received annual inspection in the last 3 years. This is an article from 2013. NDP leader Andrea Horwath says Ontario Health Minister Deb Matthews has broken her promise. So over and over again, NDP leader Andrea Horwath warned both Liberal and Conservative governments about this. We have an election coming up next year to hopefully replace Doug Ford. When you're looking at who to support, maybe it's a good idea to try something different. Maybe move away from the Conservatives and the Liberals. Maybe, just maybe, look at a party and a leader that has called out these issues again and again and again, long before they blew up into be the major issues that they have now become, like long-term care. This is an actual leader, somebody that sees the problems before they develop, somebody that tries to fix things, someone that actually stands up for the working class. This is what the NDP have tried to do, at least in Ontario. And here, once again, we've been dealing with this horrible government in Ford's Conservative government, and you have the opportunity, maybe, to educate yourself and vote differently next time. All right. Tweets of the week coming up next. That's always my favorite. I forgot it last week, of course, because, too much happening. But I hear some chats coming in. I'll grab some of those. And also, there's a couple of stories I wish I could have done, but just not have time to break down the clips. But maybe I will showcase one of them in a second after the tweets of the week. First, let me grab some of these chats. YouTube is cutting it off, so let me go to a different place to find them. All right. Where did I leave off here? Here we go. Archie, 21, says, Iran deal? Do you think there's still a chance with Biden? Keep up the great work, man. Good question. I've not heard much about it since I did a video on this a couple of months ago. Soon after Biden took office, they had mentioned it, or I forget the state of that debate. I know that there were calls around Biden to try and re-sign that, but at the same time they were still keeping certain sanctions on Iran that weren't there when it was under Obama. So I think Iran basically wanted the U.S. to take the first move before there were some real discussions around this. Though I feel like I saw a recent update to this. Let me look this up. Where they are now in talks, but I'm not positive on that. So the latest I see on this from Politico. Let's check this out. Biden faces GOP handcuffs and Democrat skeptics on Iran deal 2.0. Republicans are working to make sure that Biden can't roll back sanctions on Tehran as the administration tries to make progress in negotiations. So this is 4 days ago. These discussions still going on. I'm hopeful, but not optimistic, if that makes any sense. Because look, I was completely shocked by Biden being willing now to support the TRIPS waiver, though there is still a lot more to that discussion as well, because now apparently Germany and I think Canada as well and other major countries that were against it before still are not for it. So it's going to take some negotiations, some convincing to get these other countries on board. It has to be unanimous in the WTO to actually support the TRIPS waiver. So that will take some work. But I really did not expect Biden to get to that point, because it's a full-on rejection of Big Pharma. And by the way, of Hollywood. Hollywood was also on Big Pharma's side because they were afraid, I guess in some way, that if you undermine patent protections through TRIPS, that could come back to hurt them, even though it was going to be very specific, just around pharmaceuticals. But the TRIPS waiver does deal with patent protection overall. So anyways, I guess Hollywood was afraid it was going to affect them. But Biden rejected all of those moneyed interests to support humanity. And it's unfortunate that we have to be so surprised by an action like that. It should just be a no-brainer. There shouldn't be any discussion over this. Obviously, yes, support waiving these IP rights so that these vaccines can be mass-produced worldwide. And yes, of course, it takes some investment, some time to build up the actual manufacturing plants necessary with the right standards to actually develop generic versions of these vaccines. That said, those plants are not going to be created if the waiver on the patent isn't there. So you have now the first step in the U.S. backing the TRIPS waiver, or at least the language again is vague enough where you could say it's not necessarily backing the TRIPS waiver, but backing some kind of waiver on the vaccines, on the patents on the vaccines. So again, those discussions ongoing. But ultimately, my point here is that because that was so shocking to me, seeing, if anything, I would expect the Iran deal, like in my mind, it would be more likely for Biden to have the Iran deal 2.0 than it would have been for him to waive the TRIPS agreement. So because he's waived, or because he supports waiving patents on those vaccines, it's making stuff like this seem like a no-brainer. Like, obviously, this is just what happened under Obama. Why wouldn't he go forward with the Iran deal here? But it's still all wait and see, because you never know. Promises can be made and then broken, and they could blame somebody else. So I don't know, but I am hopeful, but as I said, not optimistic. I'd rather be surprised by good news than expected. I think I heard another super chat. If so, I did. Several. Cool. Thanks, everybody, for the support. Jessica McKenzie says, hi, David. I'm a Californian. What do you think of the recall efforts? Do you think they can succeed at this? Happy Mother's Day to your wife. Oh, thank you. I haven't followed too closely what's happening in that race, so I don't know. I can't give you an educated guess on that. I know from what I hear from people from California, there is a lot of anger at Newsom from the left, not just, BS anger from conservatives, but actual anger from the left at Gavin Newsom. But in terms of the recall effort, I'm not sure if that will move forward. And at the same time, I guess what's the alternative is my question. Because if Caitlyn Jenner is the alternative, come on now. I covered Caitlyn's appearance on Fox News on Sean Hannity this week. You really can't get worse than that, unless it's Donald Trump himself. So I don't know, but I am keeping an eye on it just to see where it all goes. Ken Clive says, I find it crazy how many normal voters find leftist positions reasonable and humane, but then don't vote for the leftist candidates. What are we doing wrong? Well, first, are they voting? Is my first question. Because one of the biggest issues is a lot of candidates. Well, first of all, there's so many issues here. A lot of, if we're talking about Democratic candidates in, for Congress, for Senate, for president, most of them don't actually run on those leftist positions. So if they actually ran on those leftist positions, they would have, I think, a better shot at actually winning their races. So that's the first issue. Now, the second issue is getting those people registered and willing to vote. And another issue potentially is cultural issues. So while it depends what somebody values more. Like if somebody is anti-choice, but they support an increase in the minimum wage, are they more concerned about the wage increase, or are they more concerned about being anti-choice? So that's kind of where I have to, where you have to look at these issues. A lot of people care more about the cultural issues and are very culturally conservative. And regardless of how much they agree with you on the economic issues, they're going to stick to a conservative politician because culturally they are more in that camp. So that's another issue. But a lot of it comes down to organizing and having unions and building actual working class power so that working class can have actual influence and say when it comes to electoral politics. And if you don't have that working class base to actually fight for these issues, then a lot of people who may support Medicare for all or increasing wages or whatever it is that's a leftist policy, it's not going to matter if they're not seeing that kind of language in that kind of fight actually happening in the country and from the person that they're going to be voting for. So there's many issues when it comes to getting people to vote for what they actually support, but I think I broke at least some of it down there. Dragon Templar says, I don't have much hope for the upcoming provincial election in 2022. I feel like we'll just end up with a liberal minority since Ontario seems to have some sort of grudge on the NDP. I hear you. It is. I've been looking at polling in Ontario, and it's so weird. So the NDP in Ontario, they're the right now the official opposition. So they have many more seats than the Liberals do. Liberals used to be in power. They lost big against Doug Ford. NDP became the official opposition. So the Liberals are basically right now the third party. Yet, when you look at polling, all of the support that should be going to the NDP is instead going to the Liberals. Even though they have like a handful of seats and they have no power, they've had no real influence at all on this government, yet somehow they're going back and forth. Like, even though we live in a multi-party parliamentary system, people have internalized basically a two-party system where it's going to be the Liberals or the Conservatives, and it's completely ridiculous. The NDP, despite the issues that I have with them, basically they're not going far enough in most cases. They clearly have had more of an influence, both at the federal level and provincially, on the governments in power, be it Liberal or Conservative, than in Ontario's case than the Liberals have. But people don't know, don't care. They're stuck in their this binary thought of liberal or conservative, and apparently most aren't able to escape it. And it's a weird problem. I think part of the issue, or part of the way to potentially solve that problem, I've discussed this before. I think the Ontario NDP could use a new leader. As much as you saw in that segment, I like Andrea Horwath. She has a great record. But when it comes to the kind of, you almost need a loud, bombastic leader of the NDP to counteract Ford. Ford is a loud, bombastic dipshit. You need somebody who is loud and intelligent. Someone like a Jeremy Corbyn to lead the NDP here. And we don't have that right now. So Andrea Horwath, while she has great qualities, I think in many ways is a great leader, I'm not sure she demands the media attention that a different leader would demand that could potentially change some of the polling results that we're seeing. Octavio Rodriguez says, wow, I never catch you live, so I'm making it count. Whoa, big donation. Thank you, Octavio. Or Octav. If I said your name wrong, I'm sorry. But thank you so much. Also, thank you everyone else. Other big donations here. Everybody. Whether big or small, your donation is incredibly appreciated. Thank you so much. All right. Should I get to tweets of the week? A lot of chats coming in, so I'm going to hold you. Going to hold you off until we get to tweets of the week, and then I will get to all your super chats. So I will be right back as I prep this next story. All right, I'm back. A lot of tabs this week. A lot of tabs. My hair is really long. You can tell when it's on my shoulders. I try to make it so it's not sitting on my shoulders because then it just looks too long. I will get a haircut once the barber shops open back up and I am fully vaccinated. So hopefully by October, based on how things are going. Though I should be able to schedule my vaccine appointment on the 17th. So looking forward to that. But then there's 4 months between shots here in Canada. So I won't be fully vaxxed for a while. But anyways, enough talking. I will get to all your chats after this next story, which of course is tweets of the week. You know, The greatest story of all time. It is time once again for Tweets of the Week. These are tweets that I collect throughout the week. Sometimes they're clips, sometimes they're just tweets, sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're political, sometimes they're not. It really doesn't matter, but let's hope at least that you're entertained and maybe learn something. Let's start with this. Saw this posted by Ghost Prol here. Remember Jeff Dunham? This is him now. Feel old yet? So this is, remember that guy, that comedian? Here he is now. So obviously that's Joe Biden. This is him visiting Jimmy Carter and his wife. I don't have the larger image here, but it looked photoshopped. And this is not photoshopped. This is just, they got small couches and they're small people. And Joe Biden apparently is a giant. Quite an incredible image here. That made me laugh. Next one here. Tucker Marks, Ohio GOP senator, attended video call while driving on same day his colleagues introduced distracted driving bill. Check this guy out. Here he is. This is him in the Zoom call. Has the, did the fake background on Zoom, so it's like his house, but he's wearing a seatbelt. You can kind of see the window in the background here. Unbelievable. So there's actually a video of this. I don't have it on me. Maybe somebody posted it below. I don't know. But man, hilarious. And the timing. I haven't seen anyone do this on Zoom, let alone it happening on the same day that his colleagues introduced a distracting driving bill. Maybe he did it because of that as kind of a joke. I don't know, but now he's out there defending himself. But absolutely hilarious. Next one here. So this happened earlier in the week, but I have to play this. It's just too amazing.
All right, folks, I want you to take a look at this. Joe Biden today getting on Marine One, and he stops and picks up, I think it's a dandelion, but it's a dandelion that hasn't even blossomed into a flower yet. Like, it gives everybody asthma. So you blow it, it goes everywhere, and then everybody starts sneezing. Well, he picks up the weed and gives it to Jill as what I guess is supposed to be some kind of a sweet gesture. He's getting dandelions all over the place. I say it was a planted dandelion there. Who knows? Folks.
Conservatives have nothing. There are actual real criticisms of Joe Biden. If you watch this channel, you're aware of them. But from the conservative perspective, because Joe Biden is basically a Republican, there's no way for them to actually attack him. So they have to create things out of thin air, like him picking up a possibly planted dandelion and getting spores everywhere. Absolutely ridiculous. At the same time, who does this? Like just not to criticize Biden, but I would never pick up. Maybe I'm telling on myself here. I don't find this to be a romantic gesture. I just find this to be weird. You're picking up he's right, a weed off the ground, giving it to your wife. Okay. At the same time, to create a segment over this, clearly a little much. This little Canadian in this segment here. So this is Howard Hampton, former NDP leader. I just did a story on the NDP and them discussing long-term care and it being an issue for them for years before it became a bigger issue during the pandemic. Well, more proof of that, here is former leader of the NDP, Howard Hampton, discussing long-term care.
Seniors living in soiled diapers? Don't you care about that? I'm asking you, what do you care about? That's what I...
In fact, I'm going to make this full screen. I think I can do this. Let me see here.
Seniors living in soiled diapers? Don't you care about that? I'm asking you, what do you care about? That's what I know people care about. These are real issues. Kids living in poverty. Kids who'll never have a chance. Seniors who've lived all their life, who built this province, paid their taxes, and now they're living in homes for the aged in soiled diapers. I think people care, but I'm wondering, there's this disconnect. I raise the issues, I know people care, but there's this void in the middle. this huge void in the middle. I'm saying I'm going to raise the issues that matter to working people. And I'm going to raise them especially hard over the next 6 days. I wonder if anybody's going to report on it, that's all. Seniors.
So incredible there. Incredible. The NDP have been discussing this issue for a long time. You see here, this is the kind of energy I want to see from the current NDP, both federally and provincially. I want to see this kind of fight from the NDP. This is exactly how they should be acting right now. They should be pissed off and standing up for working class people with this sort of anger. Next one here, Crystal Ball tweeting out, pharma was absolutely opposed to lifting patent protection and had an army of lobbyists pushing in the other direction. Biden's willingness to stand up to them is truly fantastic to see. I completely agree. I am still shocked that Joe Biden supports waiving patent protection on these vaccines. Now, we have to see if it actually gets done. There are other countries in the way. The WTO, you need a unanimous vote when it comes to waiving these patent protections. Right now, there are other countries in the way like Canada, Germany, and other wealthy countries that so far are not on board the way that Joe Biden is. But the fact that Biden actually stood up against Big Pharma and Hollywood, who also is against this, against waiving TRIPS, really remarkable and shows you that he is movable on at least some of these issues. The Surf's here tweeting out that Joe Biden administration has been to the left of Trudeau lately, especially his stance on waiving the IP for the vaccination. This isn't a compliment to Joe Biden, but a glaring condemnation of Trudeau. Yep, I've done at least one other video on this over the pipeline that Biden rejected, yet Trudeau continued supporting. So that was one issue. The TRIPS waiver is another one. I think there's another one, another issue as well in there that I'm forgetting, but there's been a consistent theme here where we've seen Joe Biden to the left of Trudeau. And again, that isn't to say Joe Biden is a lefty. He's not. He's really doing the bare minimum here. It's just to show you how truly right-wing Trudeau is, despite, his attempts at leftist rhetoric, or not even leftist rhetoric, but attempts at identity rhetoric and trying to put forward this idea that he's a progressive. When it comes down to the actual policies, especially economic policies, Trudeau is a conservative. Last one here, Luke Savage, also on the point of the vaccine waiver. So after after Biden came out with that announcement that he would support waiving the patents on these vaccines, Pfizer, BioNTech, Novavax, and Moderna shares plunge after that. After announcing that, hey, we're actually going to save people's lives, this is what happened to the shares of these big pharma companies. Luke Savage here replying saying, definitely a healthy sign that the basic economic mechanism on which we've premised modern civilization reacts this way to an announcement that we're going to let fewer people die from a deadly disease. Exactly right. This really shows you how rotten capitalism is when this is the reaction to an announcement that we are going to save more people. So there you go. Tweets of the week. All right. How about that, guys and gals? How about that? I'll grab these chats and then I will maybe touch on something I didn't cover, or maybe save it for later. I don't know yet. That said, let me get these chats first. All right. Robert Lowe says, we appreciate you, sir. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for your generosity and your comment. Radzoso says, I'd like progressive politicians to emphasize how corruption is the reason popular policies don't get enacted. I agree. And specifically call it out. Like call out the moneyed influence on these politicians, on these lawmakers. Mention specifically how Joe Manchin has a personal stake in a hotel chain, in addition to being a a tool of the hotel and restaurant industry. And that's why he was against the wage increase. And apply that to all issues, all politicians. They should be doing more of that. Of course, these are their colleagues. So I think part of the issue here is they don't want to feel uncomfortable, or maybe they think it'll hurt them, hurt their ability to get anything passed because they point out some of these conflicts. But how's it working out right now? By not calling any of it out. They still aren't getting what they want. So you might as well try something different. Utilize your power, discuss the corruption, discuss the connection to money, and at the very least, it's a different strategy. Slopez05 says, next game for Twitch stream, 2 Point Hospital. 2 Point Hospital. Is that an actual game, or is that some kind of greater socioeconomic point that I don't understand? 2 Point Hospital. It is a game, console game. Is it a console game? It says console game, but it looks like it's a Steam game. Interesting. I don't know anything about this, but it appears to have good reviews. Oh, it is on console. Okay. I don't know. I have a big backlog. I feel like this is not on my list, but it looks like a sim kind of game, which I am into. So maybe I'll check it out. I don't know. But I got to get through Persona 5. I got to get through Resident Evil 8 and 7. And we'll see where we go from there. Fam Cam says, just had my 4th interview for what could be my first full-time job in a year, and I'm rooting for everyone else in my situation as well. Well, congratulations and good luck. I hope you get it. Awesome. Mr. Meme says the Democratic Party needs to move further left. That's an evergreen post. Yes, completely agree. You are bang on. Nima P. Azar says, why do you support tech oligarchs censoring people? That's a loaded question. I don't support tech oligarchs censoring people. In fact, I support breaking up these companies. I support breaking up Google, breaking up Facebook. That is the only real mechanism to limiting their power. And after we saw Trump not get approved or get denied being back on Facebook, you even saw some members of the GOP come out and say, maybe now is the time to break up Facebook. If this is what it takes to break up Facebook, I'm all for it. So, but of course, they're bullshitting. Republicans are not going to be on board for breaking up big tech. But if they were, that would be amazing, and I would be in full support of that. Elizabeth Warren, as much as she's a problem in many ways, had a great proposal for that during her campaign run. But yeah, you got to break up the companies. They have too much power. El Hombre Sin Nombre says, hey, David, I don't know if you've talked about it, but what is your opinion on Bill 10? I think you mean Bill C-10. Yes, Bill C-10. I discussed it at the beginning of the stream. I'm doing a wait and see right now, since there appears to be changes still being made to it. It's hard to know what the impact will actually be until some of these tech giants react to it and respond and say what the impact will be. And so far, they're not saying a whole lot. So there was a worry that potentially Bill C-10, again, this is in Canada, this is about basically sort of regulating what happens online in terms of Canadian content representation through various platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, and others. So a recent provision that was stripped out then potentially allowed this to impact social media posts, which would include YouTube, Facebook, and videos by anybody in Canada. So user generated content. But now they're apparently going back. So there's a lot going on still. It's hard for me to have a concrete opinion on this when there is so much still changing with this bill. So I don't know yet, but I'm keeping a close eye on Bill C-10. Narui, if I said that right, says, your hair is majestic. Wow. All caps. So you really mean it. Thank you so much. Tiger Lily says, hey, dandelions are actually really good for you. I've made vegan burgers out of them. Nom, nom, nom. Really? Out of dandelions? All right. I'm all for replacing meat with plants, but I never heard of a vegan burger made of dandelions, but that's interesting. Jessica McKenzie said, just wanted to let you know I sent you a donation at PayPal. I always forget YouTube takes a cut. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you so much. Also, thank you for your super chat as well. Yes, PayPal link below. PayPal does not take a cut. Streamlabs, the same thing. I think using Streamlabs, if you don't have a PayPal account, I think you can donate using a credit card or something, or other means. But yeah, various ways to support if you don't want YouTube or Patreon taking a cut. Thank you so much for your PayPal donation. Anyone else out there who's also donated on PayPal, as you're all supporting the show in various ways, and I appreciate it. All right. I'm looking on screen now. David, thanks for your video on Colombia. Gracias por el video de Colombia. Thank you. Thank you for your thank you. Yes, I had several people ask me to cover that, and I did, so I'm glad you dug it. All right, I got some time here. Maybe take a look at something I didn't cover today. Oops. So opening up Final Cut, did not want to do that. Let's see here. So let's check this out. This is Cornel West. So this is not the greatest video. It's recorded off a screen. Part of the reason why I didn't cover this already, but let's check this out.
Everywhere you look, there's an assault on truth.
I'm gonna boost the audio a little bit here.
Everywhere you look, there's an assault on truth. Whether it's a GOP operating on the big lie, the disinformation spreading through social media, the whitewashing of our racial history. Can you put this into perspective about how dangerous this is to our democracy?
Well, you know, Brother Don, at the deepest of the literary artists in American history, Herman Melville used to say, truth uncompromisingly told will always have its jagged edges, which is to say, truth is always unsettling, it's always unnerving, including ourselves. So no one group will ever have a possession of the truth, but there's a difference between wholesale lies and retail lies. Right now, the Republican Party is wrestling with a neo-fascist insurgency. So when you talk about Trump, he's not an isolated individual. The majority of white fellow citizens in America voted for him. So it's a movement, and it's based on wholesale lies, like white supremacist ideology, like attacks on Jews and Muslims and gays and lesbians, and the rule of big money and the rule of big military. Now, the Democratic Party has its retail lies. I mean, you had Brother Biden and Sister Harris talking about America's not a racist country. That's a lie. It is. Why did they have to tell that retail lie? Because that's a political strategy, too. So that we have to keep track of the fact that truth is bigger than all of us, brother. And anybody who enters in the quest for truth has to be willing to be fallible enough to recognize the degree to which no one has full possession. But right now, the Republican Party, what Sister Liz is dealing with, because Liz has been telling her lies about the Iraqi war and a host of others, but she's standing strong against neo-fascism within her party. I agree with her courage in that regard, but I'm very critical of the various lies she has told. But similarly true with Biden. Biden told lies about Iraq. He told lies about mass incarceration. He told lies about Wall Street greed. You see, so that when we approach this, my brother, especially from the black side of town, you know what I mean? Because from the chocolate side of town, we're looking at the country and saying, your whole project been based on a lie, white supremacy. This ain't new for us. You've been denying our...
Cornel West knows how to put things so well. I mean, discussing there, Liz Cheney, who is standing up against the fascists in the party that are still all gung-ho for Trump, while at the same time not really giving her credit as her positions, her politics help lead to Donald Trump. The way he's able to, you know, I don't know, like dance that line where he is complimentary but also critical in ways that are objective and based in historical fact. There's just nobody like Cornel West. And there's more here. I'll get to it. I'll watch this in a second. But I noticed there are more chats. Let me grab these first. In fact, let's go back to this. So let's see here. Gina McGrath says, Biden is probably the most progressive president in modern U.S. history, which is the saddest shit ever. Modern U.S. history, yeah. I think you're probably right, which is very sad. Christopher Antonio says, didn't Canada secure enough vaccines to vaccinate the entire population of Canada way early on? Why is the rollout so slow? Because we secured the vaccines, but the vaccines weren't ready on day one. And the priority is where these vaccines are being produced. So we're talking the U.S. for the most part. So that's why Canada didn't have the vaccines at the beginning in the same way that the U.S. did. But now they are coming out. They are rolling out slowly. And at this point, based on how many vaccines are coming in, I feel like they could open up scheduling vaccines for any age at this point. But at least Ontario is still rolling out week by week, different age groups. So I still have to wait. But it's gotten better since the beginning of the year for sure. Kat says, appreciate your work. Thank you. Strictly for diapers. Thank you. Actually, I have to buy new diapers soon, so this will be put to good use. The little guy is now on the number 3 diapers. I knew nothing about, baby products before I had a baby, but apparently diapers are all numbered. So there's like size for newborns, and there's 1, 2, 3. So he's now, he's getting near 20 pounds. So got to move up to diaper number 3. So thank you, Kat. Douglas B says, can we hear anything you might know or think about the idea of a progressive national strike for revocation of Fox News charter license to broadcast? National strike to take away Fox News' ability to broadcast? Never heard of this idea. I don't think that's really possible. I don't know. Back in the 80s, there was a fairness doctrine that potentially would have helped prevent a lot of what the media has turned into. But I've never heard of any kind of strike specifically to take Fox News' license away. It's an interesting idea. I just don't know if it's possible. I know it's not possible, at least not in current America. But if anything, if there's going to be national strike, I'd say probably start with a living wage, Medicare for all, basic necessities. I understand the need, of course, to change the media and the media's impact, ongoing impact on voters. But I don't know if I'm not sure how I feel about that idea. Pizza Pasta Cat says, what should we do about the anti-vax leftist? If you're anti-vax, you're not a leftist because you're not basing your information on science and data. So look, it's fine to have normal questions about vaccines, and that's fine. But if you're actually anti-vax, then you're anti-science. You're anti-science, you're not on the left. So I don't know what else to say about that. I mean, the idea that some person sitting in their living room knows more about vaccines than the entire international community of scientists and doctors, it's really amazing to me that people think they know what they're talking about when they do zero research or just think that they know more than anyone else who actually studies whatever issue they're critical of. It's truly remarkable. Now, of course, that sometimes there are exceptions, like you could study political science and not know shit about how to win elections. But when we're talking about, science, math, data, there's a clear difference there between what people know and what people who are educated know and what people who are not educated in those fields know. Mr. Sir says, did you see the Confederacy custody case in New York? No, I did not. No idea what that's about. Sometimes I feel like I want a staff of people just so I know more of what's going on in the world. There are stories. I'm one person, right? So I'm missing stuff all the time, every day, there's a big story that I'm likely missing. Just because I'm one person, I'm not having conversations with other people about what's going on in the world. So it can sometimes, you can get stuck in your own silo sometimes and just miss out on stories. But yeah, no idea what that is. Janae Burnett says, how do we get the left from canceling each other for every little thing? We've got some major macro issues to resolve. Unfortunately, Super Chat doesn't allow you to be more specific because you got to be specific. I'm curious, like, what you think, who's being canceled for and for what, I guess is my question. Because sometimes people think something like a criticism of somebody is canceling them when it's just a criticism. So I've seen that quite a bit where I'll criticize someone. It's like, why are you canceling this person? You can't criticize people now. So it depends what you mean by the left canceling. But yes, sometimes people can get a little too into the weeds and go crazy over something so tiny. That absolutely happens. There's no easy answer in terms of how to solve that. Ultimately, you kind of have to take a bird's eye view look at everything, and it's really all about working class power. As long as the working class has actual power, then some of this infighting doesn't really matter. Ultimately, there's always going to be constant debates within the left on certain issues. That's fine. That's normal. Nothing's wrong with that. What matters the most, though, is do we have actual power to impact society, be it through elections, be it through unions, be it through groups, whatever it is. Do we have the power to actually impact and improve people's lives? And you have to build that power through organizing, through unions, and that bleeds into other areas like electoral politics. So when it comes to some of these online debates around tiny issues, I tend to ignore most of it. Occasionally I will call out, something here or there, but it's not really tiny fights, small drama online isn't as big as sometimes we think it is because of the space that we're in. Daniel McCarter says, new to the channel, and I'm really enjoying it. Just wondering if you consider yourself a socialist or aren't that far left. So my personal feelings, like my personal position, differs from how I do my work generally. So the kind of coverage I have is really more like social democratic stuff, because it's about what is possible in the now, what's happening right now. Overall, though, if you go back and watch my interview, this is maybe 2 years ago now, with Christo Avalis on democratic socialism. So he breaks down democratic socialism, his views on that, and what's expressed in that interview is exactly how I feel about how politics, about how our entire system should be set up. So if you want more on my actual view on whether I'm a socialist or what, watch that interview. It becomes a lot more clear. But in terms of the work that I actually do, I'm more focused on the here and now. So I'm less into what can potentially happen in 50 years. Those are, I think, important discussions for other people, academics, to have that are really into theory reading and into that stuff. I'm more into the here and now, what's possible now. Electoral politics is a big chunk of it because that impacts our society directly, but also the importance of movement building, the importance of building power through unions and socialist groups. So I take that perspective as well. But for me, it's about what can we change in the immediate future, and less about my own personal thoughts of where I would, in a perfect world, want society to be. So I hope that clears it up a little bit. The Human Perspective says, crystal ball time. Is Doug Ford winning in the next election? Would you vote Lib if Horvath has no chance? Well, good thing I don't have to care about that because you vote for your own riding, your own MPP. Does Doug Ford have a chance to win the next election? Or is he winning the next election? I'm not making predictions a year out. Any prediction now would be not based in any sort of... I only make predictions if I feel like I have a basis of which to make a prediction. Saying anything now is a shot in the dark, just a guess. I would hope no, based on what is happening now, but he was elected the first time. Can happen again for sure. So it's a complete toss-up what happens in a year. I have no idea. Would I vote for a lib if Horvath has no chance? No. And it depends on your riding, right? Like, this is what I've discussed before. You don't actually vote for Doug Ford or Andrew Horvath. You vote for the MPP that you want to support in your riding of whatever party. So last time we had an election, I voted NDP, as it felt like there was going to be a wave, and there was, of NDP seats, and NDP gained a lot of seats, but it wasn't enough to overtake Doug Ford. And based on where they are today, it only makes sense to continue to try and grow the amount of seats that the NDP currently have. So I would vote NDP again if the election were held tomorrow. No doubt about it. And being in, a riding where I can do that and be aware that the NDP do have a chance also, of course, helps to bolster that sort of vote. But like liberals, we have as a Canadian, you have the freedom here in a parliamentary system to view voting differently than if you were in the American system. Because we have that freedom, because we have that ability to vote for a third party, it's important now we do that and help grow these parties, and also donate if possible, get involved if possible, phone bank, all that stuff. Fly Chomperfly says, watched your video on vaccine patent halt where you said it was critical to prevent COVID mutations, but pharma okay with that. They made money on vaccine distribution. Oh yeah, of course. Yes. This is why, part of the reason why Big Pharma has been against waiving the patents on these vaccines is because they know if a new mutation comes up that renders the current vaccines ineffective, all that means for them is that they get to develop another vaccine and make even more money next time. So, of course, they are against waiving the patents, and it's purely for financial reasons, showing you again why the entire industry should be decommodified. All right. Good on the chats. Let's watch this second. Of course, for now, I will grab more chats if more come in. But let's watch the second clip of Dr. Cornel West on CNN. And maybe this time I'll go full screen. Or not. We'll just go full screen. Okay, well, we'll do this. This is good enough.
When we approach this, my brother, especially from the black side of town, you know what I mean? Because from the chocolate side of town, we're looking at the country and saying, your whole project been based on a lie, white supremacy. This ain't new for us. You've been denying our humanity for all this time. But we recognize we can still learn something from you when you're talking about other issues, and you got a whole lot to learn from us, because we have been telling you truths about your white supremacist foundation such that you will lose your democracy if you don't come to terms with your deep racism and with your deep classism, not dealing with poverty and so forth. So we shouldn't get too overwhelmed by this, my brother. Lies have been around a long, long time, no matter what the technology uses. You know what
I know what you're talking about, but what you're saying is that people are willing to lose their democracy. Lose their democracy to what? To keep white supremacy intact.
Well, there's a number of things. There's greed, there's racist self-identity, there's a fear of the future, there's an insecurity about the present, and we have to be able to provide countervailing voices that are more truthful. I would never say I have full control of the truth. Mm-hmm. Because I'm a human being. I'm fallible, right? But there's certain truths that are better than other lies, and we have to have countervailing forces and movements to tell the truth about every aspect of America.
Yeah.
It's empire, militarism, it's white supremacy, it's male supremacy, it's class structure, but also the best of America. Tell the truth about the best of America. That's where Melville comes in. That's where Toni Morrison comes in. That's where Nina Simone comes in. That's where John Coltrane comes in. Irene B. West from Louisiana comes in. Integrity, honesty, decency, generosity, serving the others. On and on from Hebrew scripture, spreading that Hesed to the orphan and the widow.
Cornel West needs to have his own hour show. Unbelievable communicator. All right. Should I end it? One more chat here. Tempo Dan says, please look into Jane Elliott and Ronald Martin. Been speaking on racism for so long and have great views in it. All right, Jane Elliott. Also for the chat, check out Jane Elliott and Ronald Martin. Assuming these are good recommendations. Because I don't know. But there you go. All right. I think I'm good there. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for showing up this week, for checking out the show. And again, this weekend, I'll be on Twitch. I don't know if it's going to be tonight or... In fact, I may be on tonight. But likely Sunday, tonight and Sunday, or just Sunday, we will see. But I did promise that I will play Resident Evil online. So I'm going to have to do that. I mean, it really is the only way I can play a horror game. I have to play it with an audience because I would not play the game alone. So I'm going to have to be online regardless. If I'm getting the game, I'm going to have to be online to play it. So looking forward to that. Come be scared with me and chat. And of course, we chat, ask questions, talk, all that stuff. So thank you all for showing up and see you next time. Goodbye.